Sometimes life can seem dull, arduous, repetitive. You can consequently sometimes feel complacent and that things will never change. So, you go about your business, and at the end of a hard day, you may find yourself seeking some small escapism, perhaps in the form of a TV show or film. But channel after channel, choice after choice, bait shows for bland people, disengaging pap and drivel abounds. However, every good once in a while, you stumble across a hidden gold mine of broadcasting, a show so profound, serving great intensity and provoking such strong and varied emotions. A show so intelligent it makes you think and think hard about life, people, the human condition, and the deeper states of primitive inclinations buried within us. A show so provoking it makes your hairs stand on end. It envelops you within its world wholly and leaves a lasting impact. The show I refer to today that ticks all of these boxes above is the 1970s disaster drama serial, Survivors.
Who's there? What do you want?
Oh, let's just say I'm an interested party.
Oh, I see. Have you had the sickness? You quite well?
Yes.
Well, my name's Charles Vaughan. I suppose you're keen to hear all about it then, are you?
That's right. Whatever information you can impart.
Well, I suppose you've got to ask yourself a few questions. See if this is the right sort of thing for you.
And such as?
Well, such as, are you interested in Doctor Who? Are you a fan of apocalyptic dramatization? Are you a fan, perhaps, of the works of Terry Nation? And are you interested in high-stakes drama that will stay with you for the rest of your life?
Are any of these questions relevant?
Their links will become apparent, yes. Well, let's waste no more time. We better go and have a word with Lewis, see what he's got to say.
Is this going to be interesting in the slightest?
You ask a lot of questions, don't you? Well, probably not would be my answer, but he feels like he has to say it all the same. Come on, let's go.
Now, as a major cinephile, there are many works of which I know of but have yet to come around to for, I've not had the time or the opportunity to viewing. So it's a really gradual process, and the list goes ever longer, and they're really outweighed compared to what I can watch, compared to how the list grows. And one of these shows for many, many years was Survivors. I sort of became aware of this when they put out the remake back in 2008. So I was aware of it being on telly then, links and nods to it from Doctor Who DVD extras, and also reviews on the likes of Charlie Brooker's Screen Wipe and that sort of thing. Now, the one we're talking about is the OG Survivors, a BBC show of which aired for 3 series between 1975 and 1977, and was conceived and partially penned by Terry Nation, of whom you may know for introducing us to the world of the interminable exterminating tin dustbins themselves, the Daleks. And Nation not only gave us the Daleks, but gave us some of their finest hours, most notably 1975's Genesis of the Daleks, which introduced Davros and is generally regarded by the wider Whoviverse as the greatest Doctor Who story ever made. Outside of the planet Skaro, of course, Nation also gave us the sci-fi serial Blake 7 and has written episodes for The Saint, the Avengers, the Persuaders, and has also provided material for comedy legends such as Tony Hancock, Eric Sykes and Spike Milligan. I shall shine a light and wave a microscope over some of these cultural connection crossovers in greater depth later on in this video, so just stay tuned for that. Just a quick general warning as well, if you've not seen the show before, there may be minor spoilers. I did toy with the idea about talking about certain happenings within the drama, but there are some major sideswiping plot twists and developments that I would not want to rob you of if you haven't seen it before and I've convinced you to watch it for the first time. So I'll keep them light, but there may be a few minors in there, so be tuned. Be tuned, stay tuned for that, be aware of that. Never mind, let's continue. So briefly, to give you a general synopsis, to give you an overview of the idea of the proceedings in this production, we follow the progress initially of Abby Grant, Jenny Richards and Greg Preston following a deadly pandemic of which was accidentally released by a Chinese scientist and was spread rapidly by people travelling country to country by airplane. Now, that sounds strikingly familiar. Where have I heard that one before? So the survival rate for this death plague is approximately 1 in 5,000, and as a result, society, infrastructure and everything else of the like is kaput. It's collapsed. And the survivors have to learn not only how and where to source food and supplies from, but as time progresses, tin food stocks dwindle and certain areas become unreachable or uninhabitable either due to disease, rats, wild dogs or Wild West-esque villains have to learn to become self-sufficient and eventually try and restore power, a sense of law and order, community and trading. Now, before we talk about the analysis of these stories and other things besides, I should like to say that I feel like I watched this just at the right time. Not because I'm at a certain level of maturity or the stage of life that I'm at, and ergo able to appreciate certain subtleties and nuances in the stories and that sort of thing, but because of what happened 3 or so years ago. Just a little thing that may have briefly intruded upon your life wherever it is you may be. What's that I hear you say? You don't remember? Well, let me give you a brief recollection, jog the memory.
As the news spreads of China's mystery illness, so too does the unknown virus. The outbreak has been linked to a seafood market in the Chinese city of Wuhan.
We're deeply concerned both by the alarming levels of spread and severity and by the alarming levels of inaction.
And so far, we have lost nobody to coronavirus in the United States.
Take it easy, just relax. Relax.
Concerns about the deadly coronavirus officially hitting the U.S. Here's what we know. A Washington state resident fell ill after returning from Wuhan, China, where the outbreak began. Officials now say more than 400 people have been sickened and 9 people have died. The World Health Organization is holding an emergency meeting right now.
The coronavirus is the biggest threat this country has faced for decades, and this country is not alone. All over the world, we're seeing the devastating impact of this invisible killer.
We have a new name for the coronavirus. The World Health Organization has officially called it COVID-19. Co for corona, Vi for virus, D for disease, and 19 because it started last year. The name, though, of course, isn't the most pressing concern. On Monday in China, it suffered its highest number of deaths in one day. 103 people died just in Hubei province alone. The overall death toll in China is now over 1,000. And more
Fears are growing that it won't be possible to stop the global spread of coronavirus. Health experts have warned that the chances of containing it are diminishing as cases appear in more countries. Most infections are still in China, but there are a number of significant clusters elsewhere.
That's how the novel coronavirus went from an unknown infection in a market in Wuhan to a global health scare that has dominated news headlines for most of 2020. What comes next depends on how countries around the world cooperate to ensure the virus is contained.
Yes, that old thing that shut the entire world down for a while, of which the majority of people laugh and shrug off now. But having gone through that horrific and harrowing time in human history and then coming to survivors made it seem a damn sight more prophetic, this show, and also really poses a major if factor in as much as how bad things could have been if the COVID epidemic had killed more than it did. This show stands, I think, as a glimpse into that reality, and that from the offset really made the impact of this programme on me that much more stronger. But what would happen if it was all taken away? What would you do? How would you cope? Would you survive? This realisation is encapsulated very quickly in the show. Even from episode 1, right from the word go, you start to think of the bigger picture and realise there is so much more to consider and think of and obtain and engineer just for basic survival. And it's noted right at the beginning it's a conversation between Dr. Bronson and Abby Grant.
I thought about it a great deal. Now, those of us who have come through this are in some way biological freaks. We've survived by chance. Now, the aftermath of this sickness will be more terrible than we can imagine. The real survivors will be those who can come through what must follow.
Oh, but surely it won't be that hard. I mean, there must be tons of preserved foods, cars, petrol. The stockpile of things must be enormous.
Oh, it'll be enough for many, many years, but that would be simply scavenging, wouldn't it? And a constantly diminishing supply. What is important is learning again. Things you've never even needed to consider before, for instance. That. Could you make that? Where does the raw material come from? Do you know?
Well, some sort of oil product, I suppose. Or before that, tallow or animal fat.
But could you make it? Something as simple as a candle, starting from scratch.
Well, I could probably find out. It must be in a book somewhere.
All right, take it from there. A book will tell you how electricity is generated, but could you do it? Right from the very beginning. Find the metal in the earth, dig it up, refine it, turn it into wire. Could you make and cast glass for a light bulb? You'll need to know every part of every process.
Really thought-provoking stuff there. But this just builds and builds as time progresses, and you think to yourself, oh, they'll be okay now, surely. Or I think I could manage this, or etc. But what this show does is it builds up a lot of a sense of false security, and it blindsides you with a harrowing slap of reality that sends you tumbling down to the precipice of an existential crisis. This show also presents further factors and problems to take into consideration to survive, and demonstrates that what hard work you put in can be taken away in an instant. And sadly, more often than not as well, by natural disaster, not by natural disaster, I should say, but by other people, which is sad but true, I'm afraid. I think it's fair to say That's a great observational piece by survivors that more often than not, mankind's greatest enemy is mankind itself. Now you know when a show is a good one when it envelops you so much in their world that you become quite overwrought and start shouting at the TV in fear or excitement, which is exactly what happened to me. No, Jenny, get out of there, no! Oh no, don't trust them, Jenny. Run, John, run! Ah! Come on, you can do it, go, come on! Oh no. No, don't do it, no. Oh. Not only this, but the lasting impact of some episodes. I can't think of another show immediately offhand that has left me afterwards with such a lump in my throat and feeling of genuine shock or upset or hopeful or joyous. And this show is a real emotional roller coaster, I think is fair to say. So, the story in a nutshell. Are you sitting comfortably? Good, then I shall begin. So the story commences the plague is already spreading, emergency measures start to take place and hospitals are filling up fast. As mentioned, we follow the journeys individually of Abby Grant, Jenny Richards and Greg Preston, of whom eventually bump into each other as 99% of the population has been wiped out and decide to join forces. We meet a few people on the way, some they cross paths with and meet back up again. For example, Charles Vaughan in Series 1, but they eventually go and live with him in Series 2. Tom Price pops up here and there as well, travelling around place to place, often because he's kicked out of a community. But our main trio grows, firstly in number when they find abandoned kids John Millen and Lizzie Willoughby, and end up taking them with them. And after having to move around a few different parts of the country, they end up establishing a settlement in a manor house called the Grange. And their community grows with a variety of different people turning up and deciding to stay, such as Paul Pittman, Arthur Russell, Charmian Wentworth, Emma Cohen, Vic Thatcher, Tom Price, Wendy, Barney and a few others that pass through. After some extremely harrowing incidents, life seems comfortable and stable for a while as this debut series comes to a close. In Series 2, we meet members of Charles's community, as the remaining members of the Grange, along with medical student Ruth Anderson, go to live with Charles at a place called Whitecross. Amongst the new survivors we encounter are Pet Simpson, Hubert Goss and Jack Wood, to name a few. Our protagonists faced a whole slew of new challenges as time progresses, such as the reliance on self-sustainability and engineering new solutions to problems. For example, trying to harness methane gas for power, particularly to replace petrol, and to get machinery and cars going again as supplies have become depleted and the inner city locations have become too dangerous to access due to a variety of things, such as unsavoury people, disease from corpses, rats and packs of wild, rabid dogs. This series culminates in the survivors spotting an air balloon that crashes down and containing a man whom has travelled from Norway. But he has compiled a list of key settlements with various produce and amenities. This traveller also brings about the possibility of re-establishing outside communication, power and technology, and so Greg decides to make the journey to set up contact. In Series 3, we meet a new community almost every episode as our heroes discover Greg has returned from Norway but is injured. So Charles, Jenny and eventually Hubert decide to journey north across the breadth of the country to find him, but end up travelling straight into the face of danger and the heart of darkness. The journey becomes so much more than retrieving Greg, a bigger picture is formed as through meeting a wide variety of settlements, the good, the bad and the ugly, we see the genesis of a new age of market trading supplies, a small reintroduction to rail travel via the use of heritage railways, and eventually the blooming of law and order and getting closer to be able to harness hydroelectricity for power generation. So I think I'll try and keep this to a round and selected 3. And who doesn't like a nice trio? I think this way probably keep this pretty short because I do have a tendency to babble, and I could babble on for hours about a potential favourite 20 or so episodes. So at least this way I can pick one from each series as well. So here we go. And we start with Series 1, Law and Order, by Clive Exton, credited as M.K. Jeeves. It's May Day, and Abby decides that the community should celebrate with a party, including the consumption of alcohol. During the party, Tom gets very drunk and later attempts to sexually assault Wendy, chasing her up the stairs and into her room. During a struggle, however, he stabs and kills her. Finding Wendy's body the next morning, the others notice that Barney is acting strangely, and they put him on trial.
I didn't.
Didn't what?
Do that to Wendy.
Barney, how did you know Wendy was dead?
The others hold a vote on whether Barney is guilty or not guilty of killing Wendy. They come to the conclusion by 6 votes to 3 that Barney is guilty. After this verdict, they then hold another vote on whether Barney should be banished from the community or executed. They vote the latter, 5-4, and Greg pulls the short straw on the dirty deed, and so takes him outside and shoots him dead. Racked with guilt, Tom confesses to Abby and Greg that it was him who killed Wendy. Furious but logical, Greg reasons that Tom's crimes should not be revealed to the others, and Tom should be kept within the community as his poaching skills are essential. Greg also warns Abby that he will challenge her leadership if she tells the others the truth. Despite Abby's disgust, she agrees with Greg.
I don't think I can bear to have him near me.
What do you think I can? I'd have killed him if you hadn't stopped me. And if you insist on telling the others there's going to be none of this business of drawing straws, you'll be lynched. The unpleasant truth is that we need Price. We were overworked before, even when we had Wendy and Barney. And without Price, well, there's no future here.
So what happens the next time he gets drunk?
Well, he'll never drink again. All he's going to do is work.
So although we see elements of disarray and Wild West-esque criminality in a post-societal world in the series up until this point, we see our civilized settlement become unwillingly confronted with having to take up the reins of law and order for the first time, after a false sense of security at the beginning that everything is well and smooth sailing, and they finally got their shit nailed down at the Grange. But I suppose this story serves as something of a commentary on the justice system, in as much as mistakes do happen. You know, it is a flawed system in certain ways, and when mistakes do happen, they can lead to potentially fatal consequences, and the ripples are much further reaching than initially assumed. And it's really quite upsetting, as Barney is such a sweet character, and he would never do anything like that, and he can do no wrong, and it goes to highlight what a little maggot Tom Price is as well. It is deeply evocative and a real tragedy played out. Series 2, and I suppose I'm cheating a little bit here because these are 2 episodes, but they do form one story. It's a 2-parter. It's that being The Lights of London, Parts 1 and 2 by Jack Ronda. Ruth has been duped into going to London, where a community of 500 people are living. They need her because of her medical training. Many people are falling ill owing to rats and a mysterious, deadly London sickness. The group are led by a manipulative operations manager called Manny. Greg and Charles head to London to go rescue her. They find Ruth, who explains that the 500 are planning to move to the Isle of Wight to set up a new life in a clean environment. They soon discover, however, that Manny has no intention of moving them and wants to stay in London as the ruler. He tells Greg and Charles to go, but Ruth must stay, and so they try to make an escape with Manny in close pursuit.
That's no good. It's too far away. I need my shotgun. Well, I'm coming down.
The only two-parter in the entire run of the show provides us with a first glimpse into how bad things have become in the inner cities and the furthest that our heroes have travelled so far. It also gives us the glimpse that there are more people of whom have survived the initial plague as originally suspected. This story is it's not short of its moral dilemmas, I must say. For example, should Ruth stay for the benefit of the greater good, as she is led to believe that the 500 persons there in this encampment are the minimum amount of people required for the continued survival of humanity. However, despite all the advancements that they have in this London settlement, such as electricity and running water, the greater good really isn't all it's cracked up to be, as we find that their leader, Manny, is a bit on the cracked side himself, and which culminates in an absolutely heart-pounding finale. What a belter. Series 3, Mad Dog by Don Shaw. Charles meets Richard Fenton, who saves him from a pack of wild dogs. He then proceeds to spend the night at Richard's house, but soon realises that he has rabies.
I've got rabies!
After Fenton attacks Charles and the two neighbours from whom Charles has sought help, the neighbours shoot Fenton dead. The men also believe that Charles has rabies and tried to kill him too. However, Charles escapes on foot. After being helped by a woman whose house he passes, he escapes being gunned down again by the men chasing him and eventually makes his breakaway by hiding in an old steam train. The train is operational and a group of people are running it on coal with an eye to setting up a nationwide train service.
The first time a railway company's waited all day for one passenger.
I'll write to head office and thank them. Can you get onto the main lines? Get all the preserved steamers going, start a national network?
Oh, big job that. Funny you should say that, though.
So this is a slice of real horror and desperation. Charles's fear oozes out and radiates into the viewer in this one. There have been some real, unfiltered, harsh looks at the grim reality in post-apocalyptic Britain, but this one is ever so visceral and has stayed with me for a long time. I don't like to really mention performances for fear of alienating other actors, because I don't think that there is a single substandard bit of acting in the whole run of the show. But I've got to say, Maurice Perry as Richard Fenton, and especially as the rabies sets in, is a match for any horror performance ever recorded on film. It's skin-crawling. It's absolutely grotesque and genuinely unsettling. I mean, Charles only gets away by the skin of his nutsack, as he's constantly pursued in this story, and the relief is shared with him at the end, as he collapses into an empty coal truck being hauled away by a steam train. And it's endlessly watchable. And although there are some real tough watches throughout Survivors due to the subject matters discussed, this one really is not suitable for those suffering with a nervous disposition, I can tell you. A few honourable mentions now, as it was quite a narrow squeak trying to whittle these down. But Series 1, Something of Value by Terry Nation. Series 2, A Friend in Need by Ian McCulloch. And Series 3, The Last Laugh, again by Ian McCulloch. Now here's a section that took an age to compile, as I am a keen lover and binger of TV and film, and as the cast is so broad and varied, I recognised many faces from others of my favourite shows that I would like to mention, from drama all the way to comedy. The two prongs of the theatrical world. Now firstly, I'd like to focus on the connection with Doctor Who. I feel this is important to go through, not only because of the vast numbers of crossovers, but because, as mentioned, Terry Nation is so instrumental in the success of Doctor Who, as he gave us the Daleks and some of the most revered tales from the Who chronology. And what I find fascinating is that this show, the first series that is, went out at the same time as Nation's magnum opus Dalek story, the Genesis of the Daleks, which, for a great deal of Who fans, as we already mentioned, is regarded as the greatest story in the show's 60-year history to date. I think it's fair to say that old Terry was on a bit of a masterstroke roll of success in 1975. What is also important to mention is that Survivors has continued in audio story format, courtesy of the brilliant boffins over at Big Finish Productions, the company of which was originally created to record adaptations of Doctor Who novels following its original cancellation from TV in 1989, to feed hungry fans their fix of Who during the wilderness years, and has thrived since, and still does to this very day. They have created and released a universe's worth of material, featuring the classic Doctors and companions and countless other spin-offs. And from 2014 to 2022, have recorded and put out 10 brand new series of Survivors, with some of the surviving mainstay characters reprising their roles, most notably, of course, Carolyn Seymour, Lucy Fleming and Ian McCulloch, returning respectively as Abby Grant, Jenny Richards and Greg Preston. What's also interesting to me is how many of the following actors not only share credits for Doctor Who and Survivors, but a good few of them have also worked with each other on certain Doctor Who stories. So you may hear a few titles being repeated here and there. And I've tried to arrange this rundown in order of Doctor Who chronology, but it became too complex and confusing, as I say, a number of these actors have starred in multiple stories over the years. So I'll run this through in Survivors order, from start to finish, and try and keep this as brief as possible, as I understand this is quite a hefty run through. So here we go, strap yourselves in, we're in for a wild ride. Now, principal cast, Series 1, Ian McCulloch, the beloved Greg Preston in Series 1 to 3, also appeared as Nilsson in The Warriors of the Deep. Talfrin Thomas as Tom Price. I think he's typecast as playing these cheeky, jappy Welsh fellas, you know. So he appeared as Mullins in Spearhead from Space and Dave in The Green Death. John Hallett as Barney appeared as Smith in Sharda. Chris Tranchell as the lovely Paul Pittman appeared as Roger Colbert in The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve. Mr. Can I See Your Passport Please Jenkins in The Faceless Ones, and Andred in The Invasion of Time. Terry Scully, who plays Vic Thatcher, appeared as Fusham in The Seeds of Death. And Hugh Walters also appeared in this season as Vic Thatcher, as Terry Scully rather sadly had a nervous breakdown, so was replaced late in the season. Hugh appeared twice in Who, firstly as William Shakespeare. Yes, they didn't just do it in David Tennant's run, they did it way back in The Chase in the mid-60s, and Runcible in The Deadly Assassin. Eileen Helsby as Charmin Wentworth appeared as Venusa in The Ark. Myra Francis as the absolute biatch Anne Tranter appeared as Lady Adrasta in The Creature from the Pit. Now the guest cast for Series 1 in Survivor's chronological order: Maurice Copley, Dr. Bronson, was Dr. Warlock in The Pyramids of Mars. George Baker, what a legend. Arthur Wormley in Survivors is Logan in Full Circle. Dennis Lill, Charles Vaughan himself, what a man, appeared as Dr. Fendelman in The Image of the Fendal. Interesting little bit of trivia coming up after this, so bear that one in mind. And Sir George Hutchinson in The Awakening. Also in The Awakening was Keith Jane, who played Mick, and he appeared as Will Chandler in Doctor Who. Another one from The Awakening, surprisingly, Frederick Hall, who plays Jack, appeared in Doctor Who as Andrew Verney. Peter Miles, who plays Lincoln, is well renowned for his various madman roles in Who, starting with Dr. Lawrence in The Silurians, Professor Whitaker in The Invasion of the Dinosaurs, and Nyder, Davros's right-hand man in Genesis of the Daleks. Peter Jeffrey, a big name in films. Knox played the colony pilot first in The Macra Terror, and Count Grendel in The Androids of Tara. Dennis Chinnery, another Doctor Who legend. John Carroll in Survivors played firstly Albert C. Richardson in The Chase, Garman in Genesis of the Daleks, and Sylvest in The Twin Dilemma. Rather ironic that he should go from the best Doctor Who story of all time to what is reputedly the worst of all time. Principal cast for Series 2. John Abineri as Hubert Goss, a character that really grew on me over time. Van Lutens in Fury from the Deep, firstly in Doctor Who. Then General Carrington, It's My Moral Duty in The Ambassadors of Death. Richard Relton in Death to the Daleks, and Rankin in The Power of Kroll. Roy Herrick is another one that keeps popping up. He played Lewis Ferns, the priest in Survivors, and firstly appeared in the very first season of Doctor Who as Jean in The Reign of Terror. Zoannon, he played 1/6 of this character, rather unusual, in The Face of Evil, and Parsons in The Invisible Enemy, the introductory story to K9. June Page, Sally, played Kiara in Full Circle. Onto the guest cast for Series 2. David Troughton, Patrick Troughton's son, son of the Second Doctor, Stan in Survivors, firstly appeared in his father's swan song story for Doctor Who as a soldier, I believe a Confederate soldier, Union soldier, one of the soldiers in the American Civil War for the War Games. Then he appeared next as King Peladon in The Curse of Peladon, and Professor Hobbs more recently in Midnight, a David Tennant story. Roger Lloyd Pack, and he's another one we'll come to after this Who rundown, played Wally for 2 episodes, and was also Professor Lumic in the epic return of the Cybermen to the modern retelling of Who, modern adaptation in The Rise of the Cybermen and The Age of Steel. Wendy Williams, playing Barbara, played Vyra in The Ark in Space. Philip Maddock, again another big, well-known Who recurring actor, played Max Kershaw in Survivors and appeared as his debut in Who as Elec in The Crotons. Not the Croutons, although I can understand why you'd get confused. The Warlord in the War Games, very menacing character, played to perfection, really underplayed, which was to great effect. Solon, the sort of Dr. Frankenstein type character in The Brain of Morbius, and Fenner in The Power of Kroll. David Sibley, appearing as Kim, played Prolix in The Pirate Planet. Patrick Troughton, no less, playing John Millen. Of course, he is best known for being the second incarnation of the Doctor. And it was a great inspirational performance, and the show's continued history owes a lot to him, and so do the actors of whom have portrayed the Doctor since, by and large. A lot of them claim to have been directly inspired by this characterization. Kevin McNally is a very versatile actor. Jeff Kane in Survivors played Hugo Lang in the rather shit Twin Dilemma. Brian Grelis popped up a few times in Who. He's Les Grice here, and in Who is Shepra in the rather disappointing Revenge of the Cybermen. Saffron in The Invisible Enemy, and the Megaphone Man in Snake Dance, Martin Clunes. Principal cast for Series 3. Edward Underdown, Frank Garner, played Zasta in Meglos. William Dysart, Alec Campbell, played Alexander in the well-loved but sadly missing Highlanders, and Regan in The Ambassadors of Death. Cheryl Hall, playing Mavis, played Sherna in The Carnival of Monsters. And now on to the guest cast for Series 3. June Dot Cotton Brown, oh no Nick, playing Susan, played Lady Eleanor in The Time Warrior, the Sontarans debut. Michael Hawkins, Colonel Clifford, was General Williams in The Frontier in Space. John Rolfe has been in Who numerous times. I've only mentioned here some of his more expanded roles rather than just cameos. He was Sam in The Moon Base and Fell in The Green Death. Sylvia Coleridge, who played the natty old bat Mrs. Butterworth, appeared as a similarly disturbed old dear, Amelia Ducar, in The Seeds of Doom. Sean Caffrey, playing the bastardish Millar, was also a bastardish Lord Palmerdale, same year, actually, in The Horror of Fang Rock. Prentice Hancock's popped up many a time in the Who chronology. He plays Macintosh to Miller. He appeared firstly as a reporter in The Spearhead from Space, then Weber in The Planet of the Daleks, Salamar in The Planet of Evil, and the Shreve Captain in The Ribos Operation. John Barrard, of whom again we'll come back to later on, Mr. Oliver, played a shopkeeper in The Reign of Terror, Revolutionary France. Maurice Perry, who gave an astounding performance as Richard Fenton in Survivors, appeared as Captain Dent in Colony in Space. Bernard Kay, who appeared in the same episode as Maurice Perry, played Sanders, and he has popped up as Carl Tyler in The Dalek Invasion of Earth. Saladin in The Crusade, masterful performance. Inspector Crosland in The Faceless Ones, and also appeared with Maurice Perry again as Coldwell in The Colony in Space. Ralph Arliss, Jim, played Twa in Planet of Spiders. Max Faulkner, who played Phil, has appeared probably the most out of everyone mentioned so far in Who. I'll go through those very briefly because they were small cameo parts, but I thought it was worth mentioning. He appeared so many times. He was a unit soldier in The Ambassadors of Death, a miner in The Monster of Peladon, guard captain in The Planet of Spiders, a Thalgard in The Genesis of the Daleks, Corporal Adams in The Android Invasion, a rebel in The Sunmakers, and Nesbin in The Invasion of Time. Robert Pugh, appearing as Terry, played Tony in Matt Smith's run in the two-parter Silurian story The Hungry Earth and Cold Blood. John Lee as Philip Hurst appeared way back when in the very second story of Doctor Who as Aladdin in the Daleks, the debut story, also penned, of course, as we mentioned, by Terry Nation. Derek Martin, or Charlie Slater, it's Jim. No, it isn't. He was Cyril. And he appeared as, don't laugh, David Mitchell, not that one, Jeremy, in The Image of the Fendal, also with Dennis Lill. John Bennett, Jim, appeared as General Finch first in The Invasion of the Dinosaurs, and the standout performance, Lee Sen Chang in The Talons of Weng Chiang, one of my all-time favourite Doctor Who stories. Roy Boyd, Tilly, appeared as Driscoll in Hand of Fear, Sarah Jane Smith's Swan Song story, and Ian Cuthbertson McAllister appeared as Garen in the Ribus Operation. Woo! Well, that was quite substantial, wasn't it? So let's just quickly run that through in Doctor Who chronological order on the screen, focusing on just the classic series and just the stories featured to give you an overview idea of the scale of these crossovers. And you can see how that's building up there. So essentially, I think it's now clear the deep intertwined links between these two behemoth shows and how integral they were to each other's respective success. Not just actors, but writers, directors and producers, some of those quickly being Terence Dudley, Pennant Roberts, Gerald Blake, George Spenton Foster, Tristan DeVere Cole, to name but a few, of whom have worked on both and have collectively appeared consistently in every single series of Doctor Who for the first 21 years, bar 1982's Series 19. Seems like they must have had a little faith in Mr. Peter Davison, bless him. But how can you blame them, coming off the 7-year reign of the legendary Tom Baker? It's got to be an insanely hard act to follow. I'm also a colossal comedy lover, and have noticed a collection of compelling crossover connections there, in addition to the Doctor Who stuff. And the fact that some of these actors and writers can cross to the various ends of the spectrum between drama and comedy really goes to highlight how professional and talented they were. It's a real testament to them, that the fact that they can marry these twin blends of the integral aspects of the magic of theatre, the yin and the yang, if you will, across these important documents of drama and collectively iconic moments of popular cultural media. Again, this took a bit of thinking about and how best to format, because we've got a few different crossovers and people of whom have been in multiple productions again, so I thought the best categorise and present would be thus. Firstly, from highest to lowest in respect of how many actors have appeared in one particular show. Secondly, Within each comedy, the appearances will be listed in their respective chronological order. Thirdly, I'll only mention actors' survivors' characters and more so episode information if they haven't already appeared in the Doctor Who Connection section. I think that makes the most sense.
Lovely jubbly. That makes sense.
And rather appropriately, we start here with the greatest sitcom ever written and produced, the outstanding, the one and the only Fools and Horses. And very much like Doctor Who, is something that I've been interested in deeply for as long as I can possibly remember. And on a very quick note, here's another amazing crossover with great sentiment to me. A photo from when I met some of the cast members at the Fools Convention back in May 23, and met and had a bloody good chat actually with Michael Jaston, of whom appeared in Fools and Horses as Raquel's dad in probably the highest rated episode of its incredible run, the final instalment in the 1996 Christmas trilogy, Time on Their Hands, in which the Trotters at last become millionaires. And Jason also appeared in Doctor Who in Colin Baker's Swan Song saga as the Valeyard, or the Dark Doctor, in The Trial of a Time Lord. Amazing stuff. Just a quick one as I'm editing the video as well. I thought I'd throw this one in as I mentioned Jason. I couldn't move on to Only Fools without mentioning this Doctor Who connection. John Challis, the late great John Challis who played Boycie. Marlene, get that bloody dog out of my aquarium! Formerly played Scorby in The Seeds of Doom. Anyway, on with the Survivors crossovers. Only Fools and Horses. Dennis Lill played Alan Parry. You know him, one brown eye, one blue eye, talks with a squint, walks with a stutter. And the interesting bit of trivia that I was going to chip off earlier, or I was at least alluding to, was the fact that in Dennis Lill's debut Doctor Who story, Image of the Fendal, he appeared opposite Wanda Ventham, of whom went on to play Alan Parry's wife, Cassandra's mum, in Only Fools and Horses. And I bet you didn't know that she was the mother of Benedict Cumberbatch. So there's an unrelated but useless bonus nugget of trivia for you. There we go. The creator that gives extra. Roger Lloyd Pack as Trigger. My God, what a character. And he played Trigger throughout the entirety of Fools and Horses run, and provided some of the finest jokes, I'd say, in the show. One of my favourites being the whole exchange with Rodney at the councillors' meeting.
Trig, why'd you call me Dave? My name's not Dave. My name's Rodney.
I thought it was Dave.
Oh, it's Rodney.
You sure?
Nuala Conwell, who played Anne in Survivors, Series 2, Episode 12, played Maureen in Series 4 of Fools. Roy Marsden, who played the captain in Survivors, Series 3, Episode 11, played the menacing Ronnie Cray-esque Danny Driscoll on the screen in Fools just in Little Problems, Series 6 in 1989. Again, one of my all-time favourite lines in that show. I'd like to buy everyone in the pub a drink. Here's £1, and I want change. Derek Martin, Charlie Slater again, only played Arthur in the 1993 Christmas special Fatal Extraction as one of Dell's neighbours in the, if not in Nelson Mandela House itself, then on the near area estate. One of the instigators to the 93 Christmas riots. Who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Hitler? Yes, it's Dad's Army. Firstly, Robert Gillespie, who is the only actor in Survivors to have portrayed two characters, and that was firstly John Milner in Series 1, Episode 3, and then the little fucker Sam Mead in the last few episodes of Survivors. Played Charles Boyer in Series 2, Episode 3. Edward Underdown played Major General Sir Charles Holland in Series 5, Episode 12. Philip Maddock appeared as in probably the most iconic episode of Dad's Army as a U-boat captain, Series 6, Episode 1. You'll know it and know it well, even if you're not a fan of Dad's Army. It's the "I shall take your name. What is it? Don't tell him, Pike." Talfrin Thomas played Private Cheeseman from Series 7 to 9. And Jean Gilpin played Janet Milton in Survivors, John's biological mum. And she played Sylvia Hodges in Series 9, Episode 2 of Dad's Army. Blackadder starts with the incredible Brian Blessed, who played Broad in Series 3, Episode 3, played a similarly larger-than-life King Richard IV in the first series. Stephen Tate, who plays Alan in Series 2, plays Lord Chiswick in Series 1, Episode 3. John Barrard is the retired Morris dancer in Series 1, Episode 6. Dennis Lill, once again, what a bloody legend, played Sir Talbot Buxomley, sir. Damn his eyes, damn his breeches in Blackadder III, Episode 2. And also as the Beadle in Blackadder's Christmas Carol. Everybody's dead, Dave. Aboard Red Dwarf were Gordon Salkild, who played Jack Wood in Series 2 and 3 of Survivors. He plays Gordon, hello Hull, in Red Dwarf, Series 2, Episode 2. And Dennis Lill, once again, plays the Simulant Captain / Death in the Gunman of the Apocalypse, Series 6, Episode 3. Mr. Bean was John Rolfe as a postman when Mr. Bean gets himself locked inside a postbox in Mr. Bean Rides Again. John Barrard, once again as a stamp collector in Back to School, Mr. Bean. Some mothers do have them. George Baker played Mr. Lewis. And a quick side note, you may see in the back of this clip one John Ringham, who went on to star in another one of John Sullivan's comedies, post Only Fools and Horses, namely Just Good Friends, as Norman Warrender. Back to George, though, a special credit to him also for appearing in 3 Bond films, would you believe it? You Only Live Twice, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and The Spy Who Loved Me. Nobody does it better. Citizen James, a comedy vehicle for Sid James, stars Sidney Taffler in Survivors is Manny in the epic 2-parter The Lights of London, and appears in Citizen James as Albert Welshman, the bookie. And this is an interesting one for me. It is their in-between project. That is the writers Ray Galton and Alan Simpson, between Hancock's Half Hour and Steptoe and Son. And Steptoe and Son, Galton and Simpson's works in general, were a big influence on John Sullivan, who went on to do Only Fools and Horses. And you can see a lot of parallels and similarities in some of the characterizations, some of the dialogues, and the scenarios. And I would say that Steptoe in particular is only a very hair's breadth away from being in a dead heat with Only Fools and Horses for the best sitcom ever, because they have similar motives in treading lines between the comedy and drama. They consistently pack in heart with belly laughs in equal measures and make you really feel for the characters, and very intimate with the characters' motivations and personalities. They're like real people at the end of the day. It's great observational work on the human condition, fascinating stuff. But anyway, I'm getting too deep into a flurry of tangents from the main point of this piece, which is what I do, sadly. It takes me half an hour to say 5 minutes worth of stuff. But anyway, let's get back to what we were doing originally, to specifically look at Survivors. Whatever Happened to the Likely Lads, Robert Gillespie once again played a police sergeant in both series of this. But also special credit to him for appearing in extra roles in the likes of Porridge, Rising Damp, The Fall and Rise of Reginald Perrin, The Good Life, George and Mildred, Terry and June, It Ain't Half Hot Mum, and Butterflies, just to name but a few. Sorry, Barbara Lott, who pops up in Survivors as Edith Walter in Series 3, Episode 3 and 5, is Phyllis Lumsden, Language Timothy, in the entirety of Sorry. And just a few various mentions as well. Cheryl Hall appeared as Eileen in On the Buses, Deirdre in Sykes, Linda in Bless This House, Kathleen Peake in Lucky Fella, of which also starred David Jason, Melody in Gets 'Em In, and Shirley Johnson in Citizen Smith, which is another John Sullivan comedy. John Barrard was Napoleon in The Army Game, Lapsley in Last of the Summer Wine, Harold Wharton in 1 Foot in the Grave, I don't believe it! And Talfrin Thomas was Mr. Pugh in 7 of 1, which also starred Ronnie Barker, of which starred with David Jason, not only in Porridge, but also in Open All Hours. And Corporal White in Get Some In. Now, I'm a big lover of media in tangible formats. I like to collect things, and over the years I've done so on various formats, and in particular DVDs, of which I probably have in excess of 2,000-3,000, maybe more. Here's a few of my Doctor Who ones you can see there on the screen. And in particular with DVDs as well, box sets are of particular appeal to me. And here are just a few of my favourites flashing up on the screen before your very eyes. So I was delighted when I saw a copy of Survivors available on DVD, but brand new as well, which was a lovely little nostalgia trip for me, because this is the first time in a long time I've seen a BBC DVD box set brand new, sealed. It had been a long time since I've opened one, and to think this has been sealed and sat on a shelf somewhere since, 2008, would be a really nice thing to do for me to open, and of course highly appropriate for the subject matter we're discussing here. So I'm going to try and do this very carefully, and we'll have a little peek inside the box and see what we've got. Oh baby, oh look at that, oh my goodness. Right, let's pull it out and see what we've got. So we've got the 3 constituent series there, all in individual packs it looks like. Oh, there we are, let's look at that. There's some nice screen grabs there. The first series, you've got Abby Grant, Greg Preston, and you've got all 3 with Abby Grant, Jenny, with Lizzie and John. Oh yes, very nice. And we've got a little breakdown of some of the episodes there. Oh, lovely. Very nice indeed. And then we've got a nosy little kitty catty there as well, having a little sniff. Look at that, Luna. Isn't that fascinating? Series 2, we've got some more screenshots there. That's when the guys go and live with Charles's settlement at Whitecross. You've got Charles and Pet there, and Ruth, the medical student. Series 2. Oh, yes. Lights of London. There we are. Great episodes. Love them. Oh, yes. Very nice. Oh, that's lovely, that is. Oh, my goodness me. In Series 3, we've got Jenny there, and then Hubert, Jenny, and Greg on their quest. Jenny, Hubert, and Charles on their quest to find Greg. Series 3, lovely stuff. That's lovely. And I wonder if we've got a few extras. These things are normally pretty generous in the extras department. I was a bit surprised there was no booklet to go with this, but no matter. Oh no, yes, yeah, we've got a BBC documentary, photo galleries, and BBC publicity stills. Very nice. And I think that is going to make a very welcome and wonderful addition. Oh, get in there, son. There we are. It's going to make a very nice and welcome addition to my collection. So, I'm going to keep this summary incredibly short because this video is now about 6 times longer than I initially anticipated it to be. And if you're still here, I'd like to thank you very, very much indeed for sticking around and hearing me rambling about what I have. This is quite possibly the longest it's ever taken me to put the video together. I've been working on this for weeks and weeks and weeks. But it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I wanted to cover as many bases as I possibly could, and do it right, of course. And all I'll say is, if you haven't watched it before, just watch it because you will not regret it. But please take caution because, as I say, it's not for a weak disposition. It can be a heavy watch at times, and with a lasting influence. And if you have seen it before, then it's time for an immediate rewatch, as I intend to do so very shortly as well myself. But essentially, in conclusion, this is legitimately one of the greatest pieces of television ever compiled by a masterclass of cast, actors, writers, and the like. It is a compulsory viewing experience.
Oh, where to next?
To confront our destiny, but we do need to get a message to Greg. It's only about 15 miles, I'd say, to Bedford. We could be there before sundown if we set off now.
There'll be no cars, no horses, no supplies. How are we meant to get there?
Well, such as survivors, such as life. We learn to adapt, adopt and overcome. We do the best we can. That's all that anybody could ever ask.